Hey, Converted Man here, and Skeptic Skeleton is also here. He stopped by to say some stuff.
I am here to say words. Well, more words than the words that I'm saying now.
Silly Skeleton something S. Nah.
Silly Skeptic Skeleton says stuff.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So we're going to watch this really awful waffle video. It's funny because there's a okay, anyways. We're gonna watch this video.
Joke police on you.
Yeah. Go ahead. Get the joke, please. You know, whatever. I don't know. Yeah.
I'm legally obliged to because that's how bad that joke was. Still not as bad as this video, though.
It'll be an Arrested Development then. All right, let's play this video. That's why I believe even though hell exists. So there's already a pre-assumption, like she believes that there's a hell, and then so she's explaining why she believes in spite of her belief in hell. Like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Oh, that's right. I have the controls. I'm stupid.
That's what I'm
like. See, there you go. All right.
And there's the waffle.
And prayer into this video. I literally spent so much time working on this. Like, I can't even tell you how much time. It's been months. I've been researching and talking to different people about it and watching so many videos. I'm not saying that because I want sympathy or anything like that. In fact, the reason why I took so much time to do this video was because I have friends in my life who can't wrestle through the idea of hell and how a loving God could send people to hell or allow people to go to hell. And I've seen countless comments and I've gotten messages and just so many things on YouTube, seeing and reading different things people have been saying, just the same thing, like, how could a loving God send people to hell? And so I'm going to try my best to answer that question for you, or at least help you understand a little bit more of why hell exists and why people go there and just what it is. So that.
Okay, well, I already got comments.
As do I, but you go first.
Well, you're my guest. You should go first.
2 comments. First, she's kind of admitting a bias here when she says, like, when she enters the conversation believing in God to begin with, and then says she's done all this research about the subject. You've already started with your conclusion decided. So all this research she said she did, which I don't really know how you research hell other than just theology, and that doesn't verify its existence. But even then, you've already started with, I believe in God, so now I have to make all this other stuff make sense with the belief that I already have, as opposed to, let me just see where the evidence leads. So there's the fact that she's letting her own predetermined conclusions guide her through the evidence. There was one other thing I wanted to say. I can't remember the other thing I was going to say.
Probably about waffles. That's just going to be the thing from now on. It's no longer lobsters. It's going to be okay. Anyway, well, I don't know. Maybe you could have waffles and I'll have lobsters. I don't know.
Lobsters eat waffles?
You know what? I don't know. We'll find out. Well, the interesting thing is you said, about studying, and yeah, you'd only find hell in theology, but I wonder how deep that study actually went, because there are denominations that don't believe in hell, and the hell concept might have been invented in the early church, perhaps the early Catholic Church. There's a parable of something that you could say is like hell, but since it's a parable, I don't know how we're supposed to think that this is an actual location when Jesus is telling the parable of Lazarus dying and going to there's the rich man that's dead and all this.
Yes.
I mean, that's a parable. So it's not meant to be taken literally, like there's an actual place like that. So the concept and idea of hell is really not something that I guess you read it. If you read it a certain way, you can get it from there. But it's kind of like the Trinity, where it's more like a church doctrine than it is explicitly stated in the Bible. I think that Dante's Inferno made it very popular as an idea, and
I agree.
yeah, various interpretations of Revelation, things like that. So if she'd actually done really deep research, she would have maybe come to the conclusion that hell might not even be a thing, even if all these other beliefs that you hold are true, and that might be another solution to this issue.
Yeah. Additionally, now I remember what I was going to say before when she was, because this is, I don't want to jump the gun too much, but when she said she's going to explain like why people go there and how can a loving God send people to hell, obviously this depends on your interpretation, but the most popular interpretations are usually some variation of infinite suffering to some degree, forever and ever. So the only reason an all-powerful God would do that is because he wants to, because he almost certainly doesn't need to. So if it's happening, it's because he wants it to happen. And that's just the end of the discussion.
Yeah, I just watched into this part. I haven't watched further, and I'm just gonna bet that she's gonna say that it's that God doesn't send people; they send themselves. So,
that reminds me, again, not trying to jump the gun, but she later in the video does the thing where she's cherry picking. So there is the popular conception of what hell looks like, and she goes, I think that's just more of a metaphor. Which is fine and all, but if you're gonna start picking and choosing what's a metaphor in the Bible, why can't you say the whole thing's a metaphor and toss it out?
Yeah,
the most mystical parts.
All right, let's keep going.
Go ahead.
That's my goal with this, and just know that I put so much prayer and time into this. Okay, that might not mean anything to you, but it's because of the fact that I have people in my life who can't get over this, and I want to help them, and I want to just answer, at least maybe, even if they don't become Christian, I want to just answer it and why I can still believe in God even though hell exists. So I have 3 points for you in this video trying to explain this whole concept. Okay, so first is going to be free will. The second is hell explained, so why people go there and what it's going to be like. And then the third is going to be about justice. Okay, so starting with the first one, which is free will, that basically means that God gives us choices. We're not just robots who are just like, oh, I will worship God. I have no say in this at all. God doesn't make us worship him. He allows us to choose to live with him or to live without him.
Well, maybe, but I've heard this so many times.
Mhm.
There's a huge problem with this, because it's one thing if we absolutely knew that God existed,
Mhm.
and then could say, yes, I like you, or no, I don't like you. That would be then an actual real choice.
Yes, like informed consent.
Yeah. I mean, like, I know you exist, so I can choose to associate with you or not. I mean, and vice versa, right? But of course, then if you're invisible and I send you messages, but you never respond, well, I mean, you might still exist, but how should I know?
Exactly.
So some third person that heard about you through someone else and wrote it down later, 20 years some odd, said that you really need me to keep sending you messages, even though I never hear back from you. And if I don't, then this terrible, awful thing will happen. Yeah, I mean, come on. It's not really a choice. And then, of course, the choice is negated if there's an ad ballum, which, of course, that's what hell is.
Yes.
The ad ballum completely negates there being any choice in the matter, because it's no longer a choice. They're like, well, come with me or die. Well, I guess I'll come with you because I don't want to die,
Exactly.
So it's not a logical underpinning. You don't have a choice if I'm holding you at gunpoint. Not really.
Precisely.
Yeah, that's why it's a logical fallacy, because it's not a choice. It's not a fair choice. Okay, anyways. All right.
Yeah, no, I actually had something I want to add.
Okay, sorry.
I was going to say, in addition to that, the whole thing about, so disclaimer, I personally depending on obviously what definition you have, I don't necessarily believe in free will as it stands, because all of our choices to me seem to be predetermined by something, whether they're determined by reason or craziness. Something seems to cause us to do the things that we do. We don't have, air quotes, completely free choices. And I find that to be even less the case with God, because he decided how many options we had. And he only gave us two options. And he made sure one of those options was the best possible option and made sure that the other option was the worst possible option. That doesn't seem like a fair choice to me, especially when you consider this is supposed to be in the context of a relationship. It really makes it sound far more toxic. Like, you either be in a relationship with me, or I'm going to make sure you go to a place that causes you suffering until the end of time and beyond. And those are the only two choices I'm giving you. I'm not allowing you to make any other choice.
That's not free. Yeah, that's not really a loving relation. And then, also you have to serve me forever and ever. That, I mean, it's a very one-sided relationship.
Exactly. So yeah, so on top of me personally not really agreeing that we have free will to begin with, there's this additional thing of God is in control of everything, which means he's in control of our options and such. And if he controls our options and makes them as bad as possible, in what sense is the choice really free?
Yeah, and even if there's free will or limited free will or however you want to, conceive of that, because I have no idea. I think, there's certain things I seem to have some control over, like I apparently can make arbitrary decisions, like I can decide to go blah, 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 but then again, maybe that was always going to be. I have no idea how any of that works. But if there's this deity that constructed the whole system, that it is the entire fault of that deity that made the system, that these choices exist one way or the other because it made the system, and it could have made the system a different way. And so no matter how you parse that, it's always going to be the deity's fault. But let's see what shenanigans she says. So
okay,
that's only the first point.
Fortunately, that this has eternal consequences, and those eternal consequences, it's just heaven or hell, right? And to explain those two things, heaven is just at the simplest, like, core of what they are. Heaven is the presence of God, and hell is the absence of God. And just to explain heaven a little bit more, heaven is going to be a perfect place where no sin can enter, nothing imperfect or sinful at all. So nothing evil, no suffering, nothing like that will be there. It will just be a perfect place where we will live and just be with God for all eternity, where we will worship God for all eternity. Kind of a biblical idea that is another way to explain this. I'll try to explain it in case you're not a believer and you never heard of this before. But another way to explain this is that we can choose to be set apart for God or set apart from God. And
okay, well, if God's everywhere, then how could you ever be separate from God?
So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, there's a contradiction there, with omnipresence. So it's like, well, where could you ever be that's separate from God if God's everywhere?
Exactly.
So it doesn't really, so it's pick your battle here. Either God's not everywhere, or, well. Anyway.
But the other thing is, so what she means to tell me is, when God was constructing all of the things, instead of just having it be so that you either go to heaven and worship him forever, or when he was creating an alternative option, he said, I'm going to go out of my way to create a specific location where I will not be, that will be the worst possible place. I don't have to create this place, but I'm going to create it anyway.
Yeah, and then, of course, the whole worship forever. That sounds really boring.
Yeah,
I mean, I used to be a Christian. I would enjoy, going to church sometimes. I mean, sometimes it was boring, and I'd sometimes enjoy the worship stuff, and sometimes I wouldn't. It just depends.
Yeah.
But to do that all the time, and then you got to ask, what does God need with worship? Like, and of course, I've heard some theists say, well, it's for you, it's not for God. And I'm like, well, but I'm required to do that for all time. I mean,
yes,
he might as well have made robots.
Yes.
or just made us right there with his presence so we know he exists and goes, okay, here's your choices: suffer forever or worship me forever. Well, either way sounds like suffering. So
yeah. And the thing about heaven is supposed to be the good option, but in its own way, it is terrible because and this is the way it's always phrased, is sin and evil and all this stuff cannot exist in heaven. It's just not allowed. So then that makes me think I don't have free will in heaven. I don't have the option to do the things that I loved on earth if God deems them sinful. You've changed me from who I actually am into this happiness drone that worships you forever and can't do anything other than that. So even when the people that I love might not even be in heaven. So it's like there's this
like,
whole
okay, so God created you as a non-robot in order for you to give that up to be a robot.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Exactly. And why would you want that, you know?
All right, let's see what. All right, let's go on.
And those prepositions hold a ton of weight. For and from, those words, like that affects
one other thing.
A lot of your life.
Oh, yeah.
She said this at the beginning, and I want to point this out because she'll say this a couple of times. She said, unfortunately, this has eternal consequences. I find this really interesting because this is coming from her framework as a Christian who believes that God is perfect and moral and just and all his systems are perfect and all that. So I'm very curious as to why she thinks this is unfortunate.
Right.
Exactly. It's
There's this ethical, like I recognize that I don't like this, but I still have to accept that this is true, even though I don't like this. And when you frame different thought experiments for some theists, they just shut down. Depends on the theist, of course.
Yes.
And I'd want to ask, well, do you think hell is bad? Yes or no? Regardless of whether it's true, it's just, do you think it's a bad idea? I think she would say yes, but who knows?
Yes, because that's the thing. I think she's this close to self-awareness, but she just skips on past it. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, all right.
That we can choose to be set apart for God or set apart from God. And those prepositions hold a ton of weight. For and from, those words, like that affects eternity and affects a lot of your life on earth as well. So set apart for God, set apart, by the way, means to separate yourself. So we can choose to separate yourself from the world to belong to God, or separate yourself from God to belong to the world. And so choosing God or choosing the world, obviously, like when you choose God, that means heaven, and choosing the world means you choose hell. So really, it's our choosing to be apart from God. We're choosing to separate ourselves from one or the other. We're choosing to separate ourselves from the world. We're choosing to separate ourselves from God. So with this whole idea of free will and choices and everything like that, God doesn't force us to do anything at all, right? We choose what we want to do. He doesn't force us to love him, because that wouldn't be love, right? Forced love is not love at all.
But it is forced. There's no way around that.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no way around the ad ballum and the appeal to a bribe. So there's actually two logical fallacies going on. So even if you didn't believe in hell, you still got the appeal to bribe there of like, well, if you do this, then you get this wonderful, terrific, awesome, wonderful thing. It's like, well, that's a bribe. It's not a logical argument. It's not.
Yeah, and I get that she is explaining. She's not necessarily presenting arguments for why other people should believe. She's just explaining why she does.
Right.
But it doesn't make the things that she says any more logical.
Well, she's saying, like, okay, there's free choice, and you choose either to be the world or apart from the world. Well, okay, but, and this causes, what does that mean? Like, does that mean just, because you still have to be in the world, so what does it mean to be apart from the world? And that I've heard many theists go off on all sorts of tangents. Oh, the science, that's from man, and the Bible's from God, so I'm not gonna, and then all that nonsense. So you got to be careful, because you are in the world. You are of the world. You're in the world now when it matters. And the spiritual anything can be a part of that and can be seen as separate from that if you want to. But you're still going to have to live in the world. So this idea that you can divorce yourself from the world, it's just not unless, and it's not possible unless you're ending your existence or something. But don't do that.
Yes. I've seen a little bit ahead in the video, so I know a bit more details, but I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let you hear it from her. This still, and I'm not going to harp on this point too much, but again, who decided what our options were? God did, and he only gave us two options.
Here's your choice. It's a loving thing.
So God knows which choices we're going to make. So he created hell knowing people would choose to go there. That doesn't seem like a free choice. That just seems like he set them up for failure.
Love me or else. Yeah, okay.
And same with fear. Like, God doesn't make us fear him in order to get us to respond in love to him, right? He loves us to get us to respond in love to him. That's what he does. He's not forcing us to do it. He's not making us fear him in order to get us to do it.
That's interesting.
I think that's interesting as well. How is hell not making you fear him?
I got to think that she hasn't read the Bible
at
all, because Proverbs 9:10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of the wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So yeah, it's in there.
My biggest thing with the Bible, and there are a lot of different verses that I could quote, but my biggest thing, and I think it's the biggest thing because most Christians overlook how terrible this is like the flood. So you remember that one time God decided he wanted to kill everything on earth, not just the humans, literally everything, just wanted to wipe everything off the face of the earth. But that's not the person we should be afraid of. That's not him trying to get us to fear him. That's him loving us.
Yeah, he loved all those people so much that he drowned them. But also Deuteronomy 6:1-2 talks about fearing God. It's just a simple search for Bible. God/fear on Google produces multiple amounts of Bible verses that say no, fear God. So yes, it is. Okay, whatever. Anyways, let's go back to the thing.
Yeah.
He loved us. He loved us first. And that's how he gets us to respond in love. That's how he wants us to respond, is by loving us. So the same thing goes for heaven. God does not force you to go to heaven because heaven is being with him for all eternity. So why force someone if they didn't want to be with him on earth, not worship him, not love him, not live with him on earth? Why would anyone want to live with him and love him and worship him for all eternity? Like, that would be forcing someone to do that for the rest of time. Like, God's not going to do that. He's going to let you choose. Do you want to be with him or do you want to be without him?
Yeah, the choice has to be made now, not upon arrival when you get to see what it looks like. Here's
all the information.
Yeah, here's all the information you need. Like, let's say that this place was like I've never been to Disneyland or World. It's like that, but it's even cooler or whatever. It's the best, place ever. Whatever that looks like. And it's like, okay, great. Here's a tour, here's what happens. Here's what everyone, here's all the ice cream you could ever want, whatever. You can eat anything and it won't matter. And, you never suffer, yada, yada, yada. The whole spiel, right?
Yes.
Okay, now you get to decide if you want to be here or, oh, by the way, here's this other place. Terrible, horrible. And your ex-mother-in-law is there, and whatever. Okay, those are your choices. Now make this choice. At least you actually have a choice that can be made. Of course, there isn't really a choice to be made because you're going to choose the good. You're not going to choose the bad. So it's not really a choice, but at least you have actual information. No, the choice has to be made now because now is when it matters. In this life, that's what matters. And your belief is what matters. Your belief has to be nailed down here and now because this is when matters. This is what matters. Serving. What does God need with servants? What does God need with you as a servant? Working here now.
Yeah, because some people get around that by saying, well, it's not that he needs them, it's just that he wants them. And then all that does is just move the goalposts. Because
right, but then it's like, well, it's just the same thing, It's like, okay,
why would he want them?
But she's not framing it that way. She's saying that, this is him loving you first. Like, it doesn't matter who loves who first, by the way. And I just don't recognize. I used to see this as love or try to understand it, and now I don't recognize this as love at all. I recognize it as just this is mind control, but that's because her theology is off. It's off.
Yeah, I really want to know what exactly she's referring to when she says he's loving us or he loved us first, because I'm pretty sure any example she can give is gonna have some kind of problems with either the evil in the Bible or the evil in reality. So there's going to be some way you're going to have to explain his love and the terrible things that happen either in the Bible that he's done explicitly or in the world that he's just not paying attention to.
Yeah, my guess would be that because there's a Bible verse, he knew you before you were formed in the womb and all that. Like, well, then God loves you before you even exist or whatever. And it's like, okay, but he loves you so much that he's going to give you this non-choice. So it's like you can't. Actually, it's not love then. And
well, yeah, but that's actually a really bad problem. If he has this perfect knowledge that he knew you before you were born or whatever, then he knew all the choices you were ever going to make. So you still don't have free will because his perfect knowledge, you can't do anything other than what he knows you're going to do.
I'm sure she's going to solve that in the next 8 minutes here.
Yeah.
So let's hear this. Okay, here we go.
For the rest of your life, like that's what God is doing with this whole thing. It's just, you want to choose God or you want to choose hell. That's what it is. So that was my first point of explaining choices and free will. And so now I'm going to move into the second one, which is about hell explained. So what it will be like and why people go there. So starting with why people go there. This is something that it's hard to understand for our brains, I think, but God is so perfect, absolutely imperfect, nothing sinful within him. So nothing imperfect or remotely sinful can enter his presence. And so if you have not asked for forgiveness, Jesus died for you so that you could ask for forgiveness, then you cannot enter heaven because you are still in your sin. So God can't allow a person who has never asked for forgiveness for their sin to enter heaven. And that's why hell is so awful, because it's the absence of God. It's the absence of anything good. That is where all sin is, all evil is, all suffering is. That's going to be hell, because there's no God there. There's nothing good there.
Oh, okay. So now this is a question. This is a worthwhile data gathering exercise. I'd love to actually do a better sample of, to ask, to poll the Christians and other religions, but Christians, with how do you get saved? Because there's multiple answers for that. Yes. Her answer is you have to ask for forgiveness. Okay. Yes. One time or multiple times? Like, do you also have to repent on top of asking for forgiveness, which is different than just asking for forgiveness?
She tends to use repent and forgiveness interchangeably in this video, so I don't think there's a distinction.
There's no distinction.
No, I recognize there's a distinction.
There is a distinction, right? And then well, do you have to be baptized? Does it have to be a certain way? Do you have to say it out loud? Do you have to say it in your head? Do you have to say it in front of people? Do you have to do it this way or that way or what? And all of it just says, well, why? Why is that a requirement to ask for forgiveness? What did I do that needs to be forgiven? Just forgive me.
That was my first objection, was like, ask forgiveness for what? What did I do specifically that is so horrible that I have to ask for forgiveness? Rather yet, because we all make, well, I assume, and I think it's fair to assume that we make decisions that we ourselves consider to be mistakes against other humans. But why do I have to apologize to God for something I did to someone else? Is it not good enough that I dealt with whatever I did, accepted my punishment, asked for forgiveness on earth? Why do I have to then go apologize to God specifically for that one time I took like a chocolate bar out of the store when I was 3 and didn't know any better? And God has nothing to do with this.
I'd also wonder where in the Bible she gets this theology from, because here we go. Let's see. Acts 16:31, believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and you will be saved. It doesn't say ask for forgiveness. It just says believe.
Yeah.
So, okay. All you have to do is believe. Well, there's other verses that talk about forgiving sin and yada yada. So it just depends. But here's the thing. As a former Christian, I could just say, well, she's a false prophet. Why? Because false prophets do not support their theology with the Bible. You have to show where the Bible says whatever it is you're saying is true. Otherwise, you're a false prophet. So where's your biblical verses to support any of this? I only cared about that when I was a Christian. Now I just don't care and go, whatever. It's all whatever you want anyways. But yeah, I'm just saying, I'm just adding another problem to the problems that I have with this.
Yeah. And even if you did, it's not that hard to cherry pick and not show the one and not show the verses that show the other side.
Well, so but at least you're showing the verse, so you're no longer a false prophet.
Yeah.
Although you're still potentially a false prophet because it's vague of how. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah. Also, I want to point out how she basically did the "you choose to go to hell" thing, but she did it in a weird sidesteppy way where she's like, well, God's not going to force you to go to heaven. So, and then she's not saying that means you choose to go to hell, but God's not forcing you to go to heaven, which is her way of getting around God being responsible. Like, what else is he supposed to do? He can't make you be with him forever. So then you just
he chose to not get forgiven and he can't let you in because that's just the rule,
that he made up.
Well, yeah. It's the nature. Okay, so it's something that God can't undo because it is what God is. Okay. What?
Yeah, but even then, who decides what God's nature is? He does. So
right. Or unless you're choosing, and that's the thing with her theology, and with many theologies that don't broaden what God might be. They single down to what they think God is. This is what she thinks God is. It is not, if there was a God, if there is a God, and there could be, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
It is not something that you can nail down like this. Pardon the pun. I'm sure Jesus doesn't want to be talking about nails, but anyways, all right, let's I rewinded a bit. Let's go back. Let's see.
That's going to be hell, because there's no God there. There's nothing good there. This next point is like so important. What it will be like. People think, unfortunately, people think that God just enjoys sending people to hell to torture them. But that's not true at all. The Bible makes it so clear that it's not a place of torture, an outward affliction happening to you by someone else or something else. It is an inward feeling of torment. Okay, there's a huge difference between torment and torture, because torment is an inward feeling of just destruction, agony, misery. And so if you are in hell without God, without anything good, without everything that you loved on earth, everyone you loved on earth, and all the things you worshipped on earth, if you didn't worship God, right, then you were worshiping something else. When you are in hell,
stop.
That's still torture. I mean, there's no difference. There's absolutely no difference.
Yeah, several things. First of all, that is like an irrelevant distinction. That's equivalent to saying, well, if I put you in the oven, I'm not like in the oven causing you pain, but you still threw me in the oven and you still turned the oven on. Like, you still control the external circumstances that are causing my pain. Also, this lasts for eternity. That means forever and ever. So it's always going to be infinite regardless of what it is.
You just feel really bad, and you're making yourself feel bad. And so it's not that God's doing something to you. It's just that you feel bad all the time. Well, why do I feel bad? Why?
Yeah.
You don't have anything there that you like. Oh, yeah, I guess I'd be bored, Yeah, but now, see, of course, now this, of course, we could go off into tangents about, prison and solitary confinement and what that does to people. It's horribly inhumane. We shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
It makes people worse. It drives them nuts and, all sorts of terrible things. So basically, not only are you putting them in solitary confinement, but you're also doing that with the lights off. And then you're not feeding them and you're not bringing them anything at all. And they're getting zero interaction. That would kill somebody, mentally speaking.
Yes, but they won't allow you to die in hell.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, and so that that is considered, even by us that still do solitary confinement, which we shouldn't do, but there's rules. It's like, no, you can't have the lights off, you can't not feed them, you have to do, they still have some rights.
Yes.
And of course people are pushing for reform, and hopefully hopefully we'll do it, because I really think we ought, well, the whole system needs, but this is kind of a tangent, but still, we recognize that it's wrong to do this to people, because you are doing it to people. It's like you put them in that jail cell. That's you doing it. Yes. Now, I'm assuming in this scenario that I also made the laws that got you to go to jail. You never knew that I made that law. And you also didn't know that the only way out of that law was to write me a letter asking for forgiveness. And since you didn't do that, I'm now putting you in jail.
Yeah.
And then the suffering that you encounter, oh, it's not my fault. No, yes, everything that follows you going into that, it's still ultimately the fault of the thing that makes the system. And in this case, of course, she's trying to justify this belief to herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't.
Yeah, and I found the very, very last thing she just said. She said something like, if you're not worshiping God, then you must be worshiping something else. And I'm like, no. That's not how this works. That's not how this works at all. That is a framework that you would only think if you were a Christian. Worship. I was just going to say, worship isn't a thing that's like inherent to human condition. Like that's what you have to be taught to do. So it's not like you necessarily have to be worshiping something if you weren't worshiping God.
Right.
And even then, if you say that hell is a place where all sin is and all the bad things is, if sin is the things that I loved on earth, then hell is where I want to be. If I am surrounded by my fellow godless heathens, because we all go to hell, then I would be fine with that. Because I wouldn't actually be apart from all the things I loved, because all the things I loved were the sinful things. That's what got me to hell, and hell has all the sinful things. So what's so bad about me being surrounded by the things that I worshipped on earth? Heavy air quotes.
Yeah, when I believe, I thought I had a handle on what worship was, but now I'm not so sure anyone really knows what that means. What does it mean to worship? What is that?
Yeah, I agree.
And if there is a thing, I think that the word really only properly applies to the divine, to the spiritual stuff. It doesn't. You can't. You can love money, but I just don't think that you could worship money. I don't think that you could worship a person. It's just not. It makes the word lose, meaning. Yeah, I suppose it could have multiple meanings, but anyway.
Yeah. You can call it worship, but
you could call it that, but that's not what it is. All right, let's give it.
If you are in hell without God, without anything good, without everything that you loved on earth, everyone you loved on earth, and all the things you worshipped on earth, if you didn't worship God, right, then you were worshiping something else. When you are in hell, you're not going to have any of that. And so inwardly, you are going to be emotionally just destroyed, right? You are going to be sitting there like, what do I have? I have nothing. And so that idea of, hell being a place of fire, I believe is a metaphor.
Doesn't matter.
Fire destroys anything that comes in its way.
And that's what I meant when I said she cherry picked what's a metaphor and what's not.
Destroyed emotionally. That is what torment is. It's
that's
not
still bad.
Of torture, because God is not going to be there to be afflicting you outwardly. That's torture. That's not going to be happening because He's not going to be there. You are just going to be inwardly destroyed and tormented. So
that's no significant difference. It's like, well, I'm not strapping you down to the table to saw off your arm slowly, so I'm not torturing you. I'm just, leaving you in this dark place alone without anything that you love. That's not, it's still torture.
So, have you heard of Logic, the YouTube channel?
Yeah.
So he gave a really good example on hell, and he's basically saying this defense is like the Jigsaw defense. Because if you see the Saw movies, Jigsaw may be like, well, Jigsaw's not technically a murderer.
No, he is absolutely.
Yes, but they're like, technically he's never murdered anyone. The choices are up to them. No, he dropped you to a table. He stuck a key in your intestines and told you how to get it out. but that
Right.
doesn't mean that if you
Oh,
die from blood
I
loss,
wasn't torturing them. They were torturing themselves. No, you're going to, dude, you're going to jail forever.
exactly. Same thing applies with God here. He set up the system, set up all the rules, and he set up the system and the rules with absolute perfect foreknowledge of how they would work. So everything that happens is exactly the way he wants it to happen. So you can't get away from that in any sense. You can't give God all of the power and not have any of the responsibility.
Well, but it's different. So therefore, because it's different, I guess you can make it acceptable in her own mind, because it's like, well, it's not torture. It's this other thing, and so it's okay, because see, this thing. Yeah, as long as I don't call it this thing, then I can accept it. So it's just it's a way to avoid the cognitive dissonance. So okay,
yes.
Let's go back here.
That wraps up my second point about like what hell will be like. And so now I'm going to move into my third, which is about justice. And that comes from the fact that God is just and that God is a judge. So the Bible says that God is a God of both justice and of mercy.
Which is a contradiction. You can't have it both ways.
I swear to you, I said the exact same thing when I first heard that. I'm like, that's a contradiction, because now, again, there's always this weird word tap dance that you technically could play where you go, well, what do you mean by mercy and what do you mean by justice? But most useful definitions of justice entail some kind of punishment that is proportionate to the behavior that you did. But mercy is explicitly not that. Mercy is explicitly not giving someone what they deserve or not giving someone the punishment that's proportionate. Because if it is, then it's not really mercy. It's just justice by a different name.
I hate to cite it, but I mean, I don't hate to cite it. I love to cite it. The Walking Dead. Okay. That Rick versus Negan. Now, I want Negan dead. I still want Negan dead. I don't care what he's done. I want him dead for what he did. But to show mercy was to not kill him.
Yes.
Not only that, but it showed we can do something else. We don't always have to kill people. We can instead go back to what we had, which was jail. Okay, and then even more mercy is, well, maybe he doesn't have to be in jail forever, because we can find something that he's good at and have him do that thing. And then we show him more mercy by doing that. And then that shows people, yes, if you do something bad, you're going to pay for it with some, jail time. But we're still going to give you a chance later on to redeem yourself in some way, exactly. But you're not given that chance. Once you go, that's it. You're done. You don't get any appeal. You don't get time off for good behavior. So that's not justice. Then that's, well, once you're in jail, that's it. You're just in jail forever. Period. And there's no room for appeal or acquittal or any other thing. It's just, that's it. And so that's not mercy at all.
Exactly. And when it comes to specific conceptual terms like this, and she does this a lot, whether it's with justice or mercy or with God being perfect and holy and all of this stuff, she doesn't define her terms. So to someone who doesn't already know what those things mean, she's speaking gibberish and she's talking over people's heads. So when she says, well, God is a perfectly just judge, and that's why he does the things that he does, because he's perfectly just and holy and eternal and timeless and spaceless, you've lost the plot so that no one can understand what you're talking about. God is this bunch of things that you haven't defined. So I don't know what she means exactly when she says God is a just judge. What does that mean? Lots of people have different definitions of what they think a just judge is. So if you're not going to define your terms, you're going to lose an audience.
Yeah. The other, of course, there's multiple problems, because this judge also decided what the laws were.
Exactly.
And also is your executioner.
Exactly.
And also is your jailer, and also, and also. And it's like, well, and on top of all that, it doesn't give you the full information that you need to know anything. Well, it does, but you don't know it, but then you kind of know it because, whatever. All right,
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's go back a little bit.
and that God is a judge. So the Bible says that God is a God of both justice and of mercy. He doesn't want anyone to go to hell.
Give us a
The Bible says
verse.
He wants everyone to be saved. It's His will for everyone to be saved, but not everyone will turn to Him. And that's for a ton of reasons, but not everyone will become a Christian, will ask for forgiveness.
So wait.
The punishment for that,
God, she's explicitly said God doesn't want anyone to go to hell.
Then no one should, Yeah,
but and she said this is His will. This is the will of an omnipotent being that no one go to hell. Yet He created hell knowing people would go to hell anyways, not wanting them to go to hell. Explain that to me.
I mean, there's. I'm trying to remember what verse it is or whatever, but it's something like that it is not God's will that anyone should suffer or die or whatever the thing is, and it's like, well, then nobody should,
Exactly. Either His will is impotent and He can't do anything to stop it, or He's just not gonna stop it, in which case He is as responsible for the suffering as the incident itself.
Again, this whole thing is completely reliant upon her particular theology that and I get it, she's trying to justify it to herself and to people, but I don't know that any of this is really justifying it to anyone, because you're not really explaining how it is that I guess you kind of are, but it's like, but you're not, but not, well, maybe not to my satisfaction. So I don't know. And then let me pull up this other thing real quick here. Let me do that. Let's see. So this is from 2015. So it's out of date. Okay,
a little bit.
Yeah, but this is pure research. Okay, so about 31% of the world, give or take, is Christians, and that means every other that I can't do math, so whatever the other percent is, 109, 8, 7, 70 some odd percent,
69%.
Yeah, whatever. That much, they're all screwed. All of them. They're all screwed. None of them are going. So that's not really good. That's not a good job.
Christians aren't going.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah, of course, some of them aren't going either. Right, but that's not a very good job for something that doesn't want anyone not to go. Then it should be like either 0 or maybe 0.1% or something like that.
Exactly.
But, but of course the system is incoherent and it's run by people. It's not, well, anyways.
Yeah. And even on top of that, if you don't want someone to go somewhere, don't create the place that they'll go. It's not that difficult. All you have to do is not create hell. And if you look at any of the other religions and their afterlife theories, God had an infinite number of other alternate afterlife theories to choose from, but He chose the one that had the most suffering because reasons.
Yeah. Let's see. I would go. After this is done, I'll have to talk a little bit about Zoroastrianism and how that evolved into Christianity and things like that. Because it's like that all plays into this. The Zoroastrian system is much more fair. It's based on what you've done in life. It's not based on. It's not based on, that you're automatically guilty and you have to ask for forgiveness. It's if you've done more good than bad, then you get some good, and then if you do bad, then you get bad or whatever. And so it's proportional. So but at any rate, all right. Hold on. I gotta go back a little bit.
I was gonna say I can't hear anything.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, you know what? I remember the thing I said you should do. Yeah, you don't remember that? Yeah, I didn't do that. Share audio. That should just be there by default. Why? Why would you ever not want to? Okay.
So now I'm going to move into my third, which is about justice. And that comes from the fact that God is just and that God is a judge. So the Bible says that God is a God of both justice and of mercy. He doesn't want anyone to go to hell. The Bible says that He wants everyone to be saved. It's His will for everyone to be saved, but not everyone will turn to Him. And that's for a ton of reasons, but not everyone will become a Christian, will ask for forgiveness. And so the punishment for that, the Bible says, is death, and spending eternity apart from him. Because sin, the punishment for sin is death. And yes, I don't like that. It's uncomfortable for me.
Okay, stop.
Wait, but everybody dies, so
exactly. But you see that last part, that's uncomfortable for me. I don't really like that. That's what I mean. Like, she's so close to understanding what's morally off about that, but she just moves right along.
Right.
Like, so maybe
close. And what I wish is, I'd wish we could, talk to her and stuff like that. But
I would genuinely, like, in all seriousness, I know we're a little bit.
Yeah, we're
I would love to have a conversation with.
Yeah, we'd be much nicer than we're doing now. But well, maybe you would. I don't know. I've been pretty rough with people.
More respectful, but I would not pull my intellectual punches.
Because I mean, look, why not just say, well, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, there's still a God, but maybe my ideas of it are off. Because if you feel like there's something wrong with it, then maybe there is something wrong with
exactly
it. Now maybe there isn't something wrong with it. Maybe you're right, but
or maybe the conception of God you have been given is off, and you're like, this doesn't sound coherent. You have an all-loving God and you have hell. Well, an all-loving God wouldn't create hell, so that either means hell doesn't exist or God is not all-loving,
or at least that version of God doesn't exist.
Which
means you're worshiping a false God, so you're going to wind up in hell.
Exactly. So there has to be some kind of reconciliation that she's like this close to doing, but instead she's like, I'm just not going to.
It's about justifying her belief. So okay, all right.
Or the fact that yes, the result of sinning is death, but it's not really up to me to tell God like what to do, and it's not my say, right? It's not. I'm not God, so I can't make the punishment. God made the punishment, and I think it's one of those things that we just can't understand. That's Him, and that's up to Him to make the punishment.
But okay, now, if you were God, what would you do? What would the system be then?
Exactly.
This would be a great thought experiment. I wonder if you do it, because well, I don't want to say many, but I've had, Christian apologists of different stripes not perform the thought experiment, just refuse. And it's like, well, but that's not how it is. Like, well, that doesn't matter. The whole point of a thought experiment is to get you to think.
Exactly.
Like, if you, the one I love the most is, I came up with is either there's an afterlife or there's a God. You have to pick one. Which do you want to be real and why? And this, forces them to make figure out what's really important to them. Is the idea of living forever the thing that's important, or is the idea of God the most important thing? And that's part of the thought experiment. And whatever else they get from it, who knows? But the ones that just go, no, I'm not going to do that. It's like, well, yeah, because you don't want to think. It's
Well, but there's a different thought experiment I do whenever it comes to these kinds of moral issues and stuff. So whenever people try to justify God's negligence in the world as we see it today, as in why God doesn't do anything to stop bad things, it's like this. So if I am in a situation where I'm being assaulted, or someone's stealing from me, or someone is harming me, and you, the individual I'm speaking with, have the ability to stop that with absolutely no effort and absolutely no risk to yourself, would you do that? Because God isn't doing that. So now you have to justify why you would make this decision that God isn't making, and why you think that's the moral decision, but God's not making the moral decision.
And it's not up to you to tell God what to do or whatever. But again, but why not? Why can't you tell God what to do? People again, this is like, have you read the Bible? Like, people would pray to God and ask God to change its mind. So can't you ask God to change its mind on this thing? I mean, if people in the Bible did it, why can't you? So
and I don't understand this weird thing with authority where it's like, well, I'm not the president, so I can't criticize the president. No, everyone needs to be criticized.
Everyone criticizes the president these days.
Once you start putting things in this untouchable category, that's dangerous, because then you've basically given it no restrictions. It can get away with whatever it wants because it can't be criticized. I don't have to be her to criticize her. So why does she have to be God to criticize God?
Right. And I would say, again, even biblically speaking, she's wrong because people did question God and tell God that he was wrong or to try to change God's mind. And sometimes God would change its mind.
My favorite is Job, by the way. I always think
Job just gets punished for no reason. That's a whole thing.
Yeah. But I think it's funny because when Job finally stands up to himself and he's like, what's going on? And he's like,
well, I'm God.
He gets mad and just parts. Who created the mountains and the stars? And how dare you?
Yeah, like, but at least he stood up. I mean, he. But I'm talking about the Old Testament where people would, sometimes get God to change his mind. Anyways, okay.
But the thing is, like, God gives us so many chances while we're on earth. He is so merciful while we're on earth. That's why I say that God is a God of mercy, because all the time, like, we sin, and that sin deserves death. That's what the Bible says, is sin deserves death.
Okay. We gotta stop. We gotta stop right here.
Sin deserves death. So everything you do pretty much is sin. Like, I don't see. This is the thing. Like, again, depending on who you ask, you'll get a different answer. What things are sin? Like, what things are sinful?
That's what I meant earlier when I said she doesn't define her terms, so I don't know what constitutes.
Are you talking about the 613 laws, or are you talking about just like that you're born into sin? Or is it both? Or do you think that everything that isn't worshiping God is a sin? Like, what exactly do you think sin is? And it's like, well, it deserves death. Well, okay, then that should be the end of the story, is you die, the end, right? Not, well, you die. And by the way, also because you didn't ask for forgiveness, you're not really dead. So it's not the end.
Yeah.
So it's not,
it's one of those things where, and I don't want to stereotype all Christians, but this is something that I come across when it comes to Christians, where they will say something that to them, that in reality is so horrible, but they don't see what's wrong with that. Like, if you come up to me, basically when she says that sin deserves death, you're telling me that I deserve to die. You're telling your friends, your family members, babies. Everyone deserves to die. And that's not a kind, loving message from God who wants
the idea that you get multiple choices in life. Not everybody does.
Yeah, it's this default everyone deserves to die attitude.
Right, because then that means, and I'd wonder what she makes of does she believe in like the age of accountability or something, so that she can not have to worry about kids, or like a certain age, like they don't know what it means or how to, you could tell a kid, hey, ask for forgiveness from God. Okay. And they might do it, but they don't know that, they don't understand that. So, and then if they're not old enough to talk and, but none of those questions are going to be answered in this video, right? I mean,
of course
but
not.
It looks like I was wrong. She didn't really say that, that God doesn't send people to hell. They send themselves. Darn it. I was wrong on that.
Kind of did when
but she didn't say it the way I wanted it. So, I'll take that one. All right.
Deserves death. That's what the Bible says, is sin deserves death. And he gives us so many chances to repent of our sin and ask for forgiveness for our sin and to turn to him and to live for him. But if we don't ever turn to him, then we deserve death. That's the punishment that he came up with. I think the issue that a lot of people
it's not the punishment. It's not the punishment he came up with. The punishment is you die and then you go and suffer some more.
Exactly.
You're not really dead.
Yeah, but that encapsulates it right there. She said the perfect quote, just if you don't worship him, if you don't repent to him, you deserve to die. That's
right. If you don't do the thing that he wants you to do, you're screwed. Okay, that's
not even that you're screwed. You deserve to be screwed.
You deserve to be screwed. Yes. Right. Well, but because you didn't ask for forgiveness. Well, what did I do? The things I don't like. Well, why did I do those things? I don't know, because you have free will. Okay, well, why do I have free will? Because I gave you free will. What do you want me to do? Give up that free will?
And you knew what I was going to do with free will. You knew what I was going to do with the free will.
You knew what I was going to do. I gave it to you so that you could give it up to show how much you love me. What?
And I knew you wouldn't, so I
knew you wouldn't, but I did it anyways. Yeah, okay.
It's like little sins also result in hell just as much as big sins do. And I understand like where people are coming from, because like I wrestled through that for a while too. But the thing about God is that he judges all impartially, and he sees all sin as deserving of death. It's not just
those mixed fabrics, man.
Yeah.
She's wearing mixed fabrics. So
Yeah.
You didn't go to you didn't worship the one true God. That's again, is it the 613 commands, or is it what does she refer? Oh, well,
exactly.
Like, a lie, a little sin is shouldn't deserve in hell, but murder should. No, it's
shall not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Let your yes be yes, your no be no. So the 613 commandments. Okay, but there's some others you're leaving off the list.
Exactly. But the thing I find very telling here is she's making it clear that there's no distinction between big sins and little sins.
Yeah, and that's not
that they all deserve the same punishment.
Right.
So you tell me, because she included lying specifically, so that's what I work with. You're telling me that the 3-year-old that lied about the toy they broke deserves to die. That's what you're telling me. And that's a good moral system to you.
Yeah, I mean, you're again to tangent back into our own system where people go to jail for petty crimes of say marijuana or whatever, and now thankfully states are getting rid of that, and it's like all of a sudden it's like, hey, things are working now. Well, yeah, because you're putting people in jail when they didn't, they did something illegal, but that doesn't mean that jail's the only punishment. There's other ways we can punish. There's other things we can do. You don't have to have the same thing in every case. And it's like, well, you get 20 years for what? I ran a red light. Well, everybody gets 20 years. Doesn't matter what law you break.
That's a terrible moral system.
That's a
terrible justice system.
Yeah, it's a terrible justice system. Well, morals perhaps as well. Yeah, but we're talking about DCT, so the ethics here are whatever God says they are, I guess. But
which is the whole other problem.
Yeah, that's a whole nother video.
You sin, then that deserves death. Okay, that's just what it is. Again, I don't like that, but that's not my place to say.
Yes, it is.
God, because
that's what. There it is again. Why don't you like that?
Moral than God. Stop it. Yeah, okay.
It's supposed to be justice. Why don't you like that? Why don't you like justice? Why don't you like God's perfect moral system? It's almost as if you know something's off about it.
I don't like it, but
wait a minute. Why don't you like it? Something's off about that. You know something's off about that, and you're not telling me the full story.
Come on. Stop. Believe in something different. I'm not saying not to believe in God too. That's my thing. It's like, look, I get it. Whatever. Keep that. Fine, but maybe you're just wrong with how you're viewing it, and can't that be a possibility? So rather than trying all these rationalizations that don't really make sense, and I did all this research. Yeah, but did you? Because I mean, it doesn't really sound like she did a lot of research. I gotta be honest. I'm not trying to read her mind or whatever. But it's just like, like there's no Bible verses. There's no anything that hints at research. I guess maybe I just hear the word research and I mean some, actual research. I don't mean like, I talked to some people and looked at some web pages,
Well, that's what she said. She said she read some articles and watched some videos. So
yeah. Where's the links to all that? And the here's some resources. Okay, so here's a video. Here's another video. Here's another video. And then there's some verses in the bottom, but whatever.
I still think it would have been helpful to give the verses as she was speaking, though.
Yeah. Put them at the bottom. Anyways, all right.
That it's not about what the sin is; it's about whom the sin is against. If you sin, you are sinning against the most perfect, holy, eternal, blameless God.
Why would it care?
God of all the universe.
Now, see, that's the other thing. I was like, why would God care? Why does that matter? Like, oh, you did that, so what? Who cares? Why would It's like, yeah, I'm awesome and perfect and whatever. Oh, you did that? No. How about just whatever? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I was talking about before when I was like, God doesn't have anything to do with this. Me telling a lie to my brother about that ugly sweater doesn't have anything to do with God. Why do I deserve to die? And I have to apologize to God because I told my brother I liked his ugly sweater. And if I don't do that, I deserve to die and then go to hell forever. Like, how does any of this fit together? It just feels like God has nothing to do with this, but he's choosing to take it personally, and therefore we're responsible for that.
I mean, if you conceive of this perfect being, it doesn't need anything, and it doesn't need to be upset at things in this way. And
that seems like such a petty human emotion.
Yeah, and although she's not framing it as upset, it's still that's well, anyways, okay. Back to the thing. We're almost done. No, we're not. 11 to 9. Yeah.
So it's not, what you did. It's whom the sin was against. And because the Bible says, sin results in death, that's the punishment. That's what we get. So going back to the point that I started this whole thing on was that God is just and about justice. So if you think about earthly judges, when someone commits a crime, they get punishment for that, right? If a criminal committed a crime and didn't get the punishment they deserved, then that would not be a good judge. And so God is a good judge. And so when someone commits a crime against him, they deserve punishment for that. And that to me makes sense, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, you can't have it both ways. God's a good judge because he punishes the people, but then there's a way out of that punishment. So then God's not a good judge.
Exactly. Like there's this loophole where because she just said if someone commits a crime and they get away with it, then that's not. I just saw the thing in the chat. If someone commits a crime and they don't get the punishment that they deserve, then that's not a good judge. The problem is that's exactly how God functions. If you ask for forgiveness, you can get away with any crime because God can forgive any sin, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, I just leave that there. Thanks to Stockholm syndrome, everyone can love God. Yeah, well, I mean, basically, yeah.
But that's such a messed up system that if you base the crime based on who it's done against and not what the crime is, because
well, yeah, it's just I don't know. I'm let's just get through this. Here we go. I'm going back.
Yeah, crime deserves punishment. That makes sense. And same with not forcing someone to go anywhere they don't want to be for all eternity.
Something else I want to point out, not necessarily. Someone committing a crime does not necessarily mean, in my opinion, that they automatically deserve punishment. It depends on what they did.
Yeah, that's a whole nother discussion. I mean, my goodness,
I know, and I'm not going to go down that.
But it's good because that's the whole reason you wanted to do this. Like, there's so many things to talk about.
Exactly. And that's why I couldn't condense it into its own video because I keep going off on these side things like,
Well, let's talk about the justice system. Okay, well, let's talk about that. We know that ours is not perfect, and it is certainly broken in many parts, and we could certainly do better than it. And the very fact that we recognize that and then go, but here's this perfect system. But then we would never, ever do that, quote, perfect, quote, system here because it wouldn't be perfect and it wouldn't be fair. And people would, I would hope, rebel against it and fight it and overthrow it and, whatever, because
that's why we have a system of checks and balances and God does not.
And even, I mean, heck, now there's more prison advocates now coming out of the woodwork because of C-19 and that the prisoners are getting this. It's like, well, yeah, because they're in prison. They don't. So it's like, well, maybe this will help us finally start to get an actual change in how we do things. But, I mean, we're not going to do things that make sense. But that's, we're humans. We're flawed, Yeah, if it's a perfect system, we need an upgrade. Yeah, exactly. Inbox Dictator, also welcome to this chat and all the things. Okay, we're almost done. Let's get this through it. So it's not just, we're not going to stop for like we're going to get to this. We're going to get through this, damn it.
That to me, not sending people to heaven, allowing people to go to heaven if they don't want to be there, that to me makes sense. What doesn't make sense to me is that God himself would come to earth and take the death that we deserved. Even though he did not need to do that at all, he did that for us. That is what doesn't make sense. He did that so we could see how much he loves us and so that we did not have to die, even though we deserved to.
That also doesn't make sense, but probably for different reasons than her.
Even, okay, there's many problems with it. It doesn't matter whether it makes sense or not. I just have to say that as a point of logic, because, just because something doesn't make sense, that doesn't make it not true. This is an appeal to personal incredulity. Well, that doesn't make sense. Therefore, it's not true. Or what? No, it doesn't matter whether it makes sense or not. That's irrelevant. Okay, let's just shelf that. Okay, you don't deserve to die. You think that that's the thing. And then you also think that the system was set up by this entity that also then set up a system to let you get out of the system that it set up to show you how much it loved you. Here's a better system. Just don't do any of that. How about that? Just, just say you're fine and you're all forgiven automatically. That's a better system.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
What was the last thing you were talking about? I'm sorry.
Well, the again with the system of Jesus died and all that. It's like, he didn't have to do that. Well, but he kind of did, because there's a system that is set up to fail. That was the other thing I remember now. So the problem with this and why it doesn't make sense in a different way is God can achieve the exact same goal with no suffering, but decided to add suffering that was completely unnecessary. So you can't say to me that was a display of love. It's like someone who jumps in front of a bullet for you, but they're also the same person that shot the gun. They could have just not shot the gun. Yeah, just don't shoot the gun, right?
So you can't. So to me, it doesn't.
You deserve to die, but I'm going to take the bullet for you. Wait, what? That's how much I love you. But then don't shoot me. Wait, what?
Yeah, and then you're still going to die anyways, and still go to hell anyways. So
you did deserve, because you didn't accept that. Jeez. All right.
So then that's the whole thing of whether it was even effective. So I just say all that to say it was completely unnecessary, not in the sense that she's talking about, but in the sense that I could have saved everyone without the blood sacrifice of my son.
I agree that the system is not just one that doesn't make sense. It's an incoherent system. That's the problem. Because, again, this is me pontificating on her lack of theology nuance, but it's not that matters in a skeptical sense, but it mattered to my past self, so I get to rant about it, darn it.
Yeah, go ahead. I love a good rant.
Yeah, look, I'm not even having to point out the problems with this skeptically. I get to point out the problems theologically with this. Yes. So it's look, even from the theology, you're wrong on multiple levels of how you're understanding this. And I get that you're trying to justify it, but the problem is you're missing the point. And I think I want to say Jordan Peterson said something like this, but maybe it was somebody else. I don't know. Anyways, doesn't matter, because I'd have to find the reference anyways. But it was if you believe that the thing that the Bible's talking about is true, you might miss the point. The point of the story is not to think that this really happened. The point of the story is the moral that's in there. Yeah, that's the point. Is you don't have to believe that the world had a complete flood in order to understand the story and what it's about. It's about overcoming obstacles. It's about preparing. It's about unifying. There's many things you can extract. I'm pretty sure it was Jordan Peterson because he does did the biblical lecture series, and
I remember.
he secularizes that very well, and he has his own beliefs or whatever, and okay, fine, but he totally secularizes these things, and you don't have to view this as actually of happening for it to have a purpose and a meaning to your life. And so when you're trying to understand this whole, God sent Jesus to die for our sins because it's like you're missing the actual point of the story, because maybe there's something else going on deeper than what you think. And you're missing that because you're trying to understand the surface level, which I get, because it's very easy to just go with the surface level. It's difficult to go to the critical levels that you should be going into. But whatever. Anyways, that's just a theological stance. Anyways, how do beliefs, especially mystery, inform? Well, they don't. Yeah, I mean, none of these beliefs inform anything about reality, of course. But that's a whole separate thing.
Well, I'm not sure I understand what they mean by inform. I guess like I guess your beliefs affect your behaviors, and like your behaviors would affect reality, but I don't think the beliefs themselves directly have an effect without behavior or something like that. So
yeah, it's hard to say. Well,
confused as to what they mean by that question.
Yeah, I mean, and again, Yin Yang might, who knows when he was commenting that in the middle of my theological rampage that I was going on. But then again, it doesn't matter because theology is whatever you want it to be. So
I have to die even though we deserved to. That doesn't make sense to me. Something I said in the very beginning of this video was that I don't want anyone to go to hell. And I 100% mean that. But at the same time, I don't want people who committed terrible injustices against other people to go unpunished, because a lot of people commit crimes and they never get punished for that. They never, the people who they committed the crimes against, they never get justice for what happened to them. And that makes me angry. I don't want people who committed, the Holocaust and the Rwanda genocide, and people who are in charge of sex trafficking and child labor and rape and all these things I could name for you, just evil, horrible things that are happening and have happened in the world. I don't want any of those people to go unpunished. And maybe that's unfair of me to say, but I don't think it is. I don't want those people who those crimes were committed against to never get justice for that. And God doesn't want people to go unpunished for that either. And that's exactly like who God is.
But they will go unpunished if they believe and ask for forgiveness.
Exactly.
The people that have been on death row, there's, oh man, I forget what, but there's several serial killers. And one, that repented and, had the chaplain there and the whole thing, and he got baptized, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. So if he asked for forgiveness out loud, which is her criteria for salvation, therefore he doesn't get punished.
Exactly.
He gets the earthly punishment, but he doesn't get the eternal punishment. So then if you take that same scenario and go, well, this person never gets caught. They do all this, crimes against humanity. They never get caught. And they ask for forgiveness from your God just before they die. They don't face any punishment either. And you recognize that as bad.
No, she recognizes that as good because they asked for forgiveness.
Yeah, well, but she said, no, it's bad that they didn't get punished. She doesn't want them to not get punished, but they're not going to get punished.
And that's God's perfect system. And see, that's the contradiction. So I don't like to use the word lie flippantly, but when she says, I don't want all these terrible people to get away with these things.
I understand, but they're going to get away if your system is right and they happen to follow it.
Exactly.
So you
that's
can't
why
have...
I say, whether or not she realizes it, the implications of the things she's saying demonstrates that that's a lie. You don't care about whether or not they get punished. You care about whether or not they ask for forgiveness.
I believe invisible pink pixies at the bottom of my garden. They're here to cast spells and counteract your injustice. Now what? Well, I think that the follow-up was that they'll go to hell for you, so you're fine. Yeah, exactly. I mean, sure, why not? You just believe whatever at this point. Doesn't okay.
is like
Almost.
he is just, and he won't let people who committed crimes go unpunished. You know, people who
Except he
commit
will.
crimes deserve punishment, and he will give that punishment if they never repent and never act.
Right, if they never, there you go. He will do the thing if they don't repent. So if they do repent, then they get away with it. Right. So
that's what I mean when I say this isn't about what you do. This isn't about who you do it against. This isn't about any of all the other stuff. This is about whether or not you ask for forgiveness. That is the sole criteria that determines all this other stuff.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
Ask for forgiveness. So that wraps up my third point of the video. I know that this
Yay,
is
we got to the end.
heavy topic. I feel drained like when I talk about it because it's hard for
I
me
don't.
to
We've
talk
been
about,
at it for an hour. I could go
like,
another hour.
What it comes down to at the heart of it, of hell
this
and
is an
heaven
11-minute video.
God gives us free will. God gives us a choice. Do you want to spend eternity?
It's like a 12-minute video. We've been ranting about it for an hour. I could go another hour. I'm not drained. I think she's drained because of cognitive dissonance. Because whenever I've had that, it does drain me. So
yes, trust me, I could go for another hour as well.
Like, I know. Not only do I know that I'm right about hell being a construct of the church, I know that theologically. I know it as a skeptic. It's like so even if your God belief is true, and it could be, but I don't know. But there's no hell to worry about. It's a made up thing. Anyways, okay, back to the thing.
Eternity with him, or do you want to spend eternity apart from him?
That's
to me
both.
the core of what these two things are, and why we go to them is that God lets us choose what we want.
It's not a choice.
So for
but
you,
what if I want a different choice than the two?
Yeah. Right. Like what? Maybe I want to spend like half my time away from you, and then half the time with you, or maybe half the time with you, and then half the time. Some maybe every other day. Like, and then on the weekend, you just let me not exist for a while. Like every other day, like I can be in the other place, and then. But
or
one of the days,
each of a little, and then
just I mean.
We get a free sample of each, and then I can decide.
For a while. Like, here's what it is to not exist.
Yeah,
that was that. I didn't. What happened? Yeah, no, that's what that was like. But no, I didn't feel it exactly. Oh, okay, I get it. All right. And here's what this paradise is like. Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah. It's just, anyways.
You might be one of those people out there who's been wrestling through this idea, and maybe you don't want anything to do with God, or maybe you're trying to do everything that you can to get away from him. I don't know your story. I don't know, what's happened in your life, but I want you to know that you are loved, and that every single day that God's love has been chasing after you.
No,
and he will continue to pursue you every single day until you die. Like, God will never stop loving you and never stop wanting you to be in a relationship with him.
God doesn't take no for an answer.
And if you've never been told that before, I would love to talk to you more about it. Or even if you have been told it before, like whatever it is, I will talk to you if you need to talk. I'm not one to debate. I don't debate. That's not me at all, but I will talk. I will sit down and have a conversation with you if I know in real life. But like, if I don't, and that's not possible, I will message you and I will talk to you. We will wrestle through this together. Have a great day and know that you are so loved and so beautiful.
The thing about her saying I am so loved is dramatically undercut when not too long ago she was telling me I deserve to die.
Yeah, so, I mean, now look, I like if we could just take that last message, you're beautiful and you're loved, and remove all the rest and just say that. And just say, hey, I like you. Now, I can't say I love people because I don't, that means a certain thing. And I can't just love somebody I don't know. But I can say you are unique. I can say you are, worthy of existence because you offer
valuable.
I can say all sorts of positive things about you, and we can do that to each other, and that's what Of course, we can say things that are destructive as well, and it's up to us to decide what to do as far as what we're going to say to each other, not say to each other, do to each other, not do to each other. And when you're trying to explain this infinite torture, which isn't torture, and justify it, and then your justification is free will, it's not exactly what you think, it's not this hell, and it's not fire and brimstone, it's just a different kind of thing. It's not torture, it's just suffering. Well, that's the same thing.
It's not your usual hell. It's a different kind of hell.
God sending you. See, you get to choose. Do you want to be with God or not? And that's what makes hell okay. It's like, no, it doesn't make any of this okay. It makes everything worse.
Obviously, it does. Either you give me your wallet or you take a bullet to the head. Aren't you glad that the thief is giving you such a good choice? You can choose to live and give your wallet to him and go on living your life, or you can take a bullet to the head. He's not going to force you to give him his wallet. He just,
I love you, but only if you do this thing that I want you to do. And if you don't, then, blah, blah. It's not.
But that's the thing. I think she would still argue, even the people in hell, she would still argue that God loves them.
Yeah, of course. That's why you're in hell, because God didn't want you to be in heaven. It's like, well, but now I want to be in heaven. Well, it's too late now. You don't get to get out now. Why not?
Wait a minute. Number 3.
Like,
another option where I could just I've heard conceptions of purgatory. Why not?
God not that? Yeah, or something else. Or I'm gonna have to go to the good place as the example of an actual heaven that makes sense. An actual makes sense heaven. Here's a heaven that's not perfect because everybody's bored. And they're like, wait a minute, what? Why is everyone bored? They're in paradise. They can do anything they want. It's like, yeah, that's the problem. They can do everything. And they're bored. They've run out of things to do. It's like, well, how do we fix that? We fix that by letting them know that they can end their existence. They don't have to, but they can. It's their choice.
Giving them another choice.
They could do it. They might not. Like, the one character decides, as far as we know, she continues to exist forever. But there are still unanswered questions that I would love to have answered, but it's not that sort of show. It's mostly for comedy and also for the ethics and discussions as well. But the idea that mortality has to exist even in eternity makes sense. It makes
even if it's just as a choice.
Yeah, it's a choice because well, maybe you didn't run out of stuff to do, or maybe you're like, well, I did everything I want to. I feel like I'm done. I'm complete. I'm ready to not be now. And for others, their list goes on and on. Perhaps it goes on and on so long that their list goes on and on forever. But at some point, now this is what I say, that the show doesn't go into. At some point, the sun explodes, so there are no more people. And at some point, heaven empties out because everybody is either exiting or there's remaining. And then you have this question of, well, then what happens? What's next after that? What do they do? Do they change the whole system? Or, and like they said, well, the system might change by the time you make it to heaven because it's not a perfect system. So it could all fall apart. So you don't really get a guarantee. And that's the most human thing of all. I'm like, oh man, you've got it all covered. But what does it mean to be a good person? And that's the question in the show. And that's the question to grapple with as humans is, what does it mean to be good? Does it mean that I can do a bad thing, but if I just ask something that's not the person or the something else and say, I'm sorry. I didn't say sorry to you who I wronged. I said sorry to this other thing. Yeah. Well, you should say sorry to the other person, but it didn't say that in the Bible.
It doesn't.
So, but okay, well, so, and sometimes we can't. Sometimes we do something, it's in the past, we can't undo it, we can't say sorry. We're never going to encounter that person again, and all we can do is feel bad about it. Mm-hmm. Well, that's hell, but it's a temporary hell in that I can try to understand why I did it, and maybe telling the story will help someone else in some way that I'm not aware of.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of something. I'm gonna try not to make this too long. But
no. This is as long as we want.
Yeah. The thing about punishment in general is that punishment has to serve some sort of practical purpose.
Yeah. I'm sorry, the chat. This is great. I saw that earlier. There. It would be unfortunate if talking. Yeah. In Soviet Russia, hell is you. Wait, what? Hell sends you to it. Wait, no.
Yeah. So justice has to serve some sort of practical purpose. You can't just be punishing people for the sake of punishing people. I think a lot of people intuitively think that, people who do bad things should get punished. and that makes sense. But that's far too broad, and it doesn't have a practical purpose. Why are you punishing people? I believe the point of punishment is not, I can't think of the right word. It's not reformation, but reformation is the best word I can think of. Rehabilitation. So either rehabilitation and to make an example to other people to not do the behavior that you did. That's why we enforce punishments. Otherwise, we're just doing it for the sake of doing it. And hell accomplishes neither of those things because the person in question doesn't get the chance to get rehabilitated because they're just being punished forever. And the people on earth can't see that, can't directly interact with that. So they don't know which behaviors they should stay away from and which behaviors they shouldn't because the punishment isn't visible.
And then to throw on top of that that there isn't a justice system in this particular theology because everything that you do is permitted as long as you say you're sorry.
Exactly. So it goes against, because she compared it to earthly judges, but I don't think she understands the comparison. The entire point of an earthly justice system is to have some sort of pragmatic function. As far as I can tell, hell just exists so that people who don't apologize can get tortured forever.
Right. And of course, again, I have to say, it doesn't actually exist, even if it turns out that Yahweh is there and my research was incorrect, but I doubt it. But hell is an invention. I always
imagine if God came down and he saw what people thought and he's like,
yeah, what are you doing? This is true.
I fell asleep at the wheel for 5 minutes and Earth just went to...
I blinked and, I mean, what were you guys thinking? And I like the comedian that said, Jesus would see all these crucifixes and be like, nope, I'm out of here,
Like, we're in the crucifix. I think you misunderstood the point of the story. I don't want to come to Earth and see
that. You're funny. You're funny. Yeah. His version of hell is to listen to my videos when I was Infinite Hope.
I saw that, and they said back to back for all eternity.
Yeah, back to back forever. Yeah, But on the upside, you will get all my content. A lot of it's been, deleted. So that would be good. See, but if you worship the lobster, the real God,
you can always not do that and then just get in the oven.
Yeah. If you don't believe in my book, then and that's the other thing is this isn't a reason to believe or not to believe.
Exactly.
I think that the threat of hell, which I believe is a creation of the Catholic Church, or at least the early church. It was creation of the church at some point. Because it's there, but it's not there. You have to read into the Bible to make hell exist, okay?
Yeah.
And there's other things I could go on. But at any rate, okay, this is a good idea, too, that it's the believer wanting to punish the unbeliever. So it might be that. It's the ultimate in kind of, if I stop believing, then this terrible, horrible thing will happen. So that forces me to keep believing.
Yeah.
And it's like, if the belief is worthy, then you don't need to scare yourself into it. You don't need to bribe yourself into it. If the belief is worthy in and of itself,
yes,
then you don't need to believe those things on top of it to keep. And if you do, then stop believing in it because it's not worthy.
Exactly. When we were talking through email and we were talking about whether or not you can choose your beliefs, and I said, like, if
I don't know,
you are in a position where you are trying to brainwash yourself to believe something, then you don't already believe it. Because if you believed it, none of this other stuff would be necessary.
Right. I mean, you might be able to convince yourself eventually. I don't know, because the mind's pretty weird and we can do wacky things with it. So it could be.
No, I know. I'm just saying your starting point wasn't belief.
Your starting point wasn't belief, but eventually you could trick yourself into getting there. But it's like, is that really what you're telling me that this being wants for us? No. I mean, that's not a perfect being. Why would it want me to do this twisted back? Why wouldn't it accept me for who I am, how I am, flaws and all?
Exactly.
I can do that with other humans. Now, granted,
you're supposed to do that with other humans.
Yeah, I mean, we have. Well, there's.
I mean, in terms of like the Christian perspective, you're supposed to accept other people as they are, presumably.
Well, yeah. yeah, it's God that's supposed to judge your sins, not me, even though you're the one to, yeah.
Yeah.
You will bow to my God. Yeah, I've had that, and or you'll be sorry in the end, or and this is that they are God. Whenever somebody says that, they are actually God. That's what they're doing. They're making themselves God, because the real God, if there is a real God, wouldn't do that. It wouldn't make you bow to it. It wouldn't care. Why would it? It's so beyond that. So beyond. And I'm a skeptic, and I'm saying this. I'm like, look, you're wrong, Christian. You're worshiping like a lesser God than actually exists by making it into this other version. Exactly. Like you missed the point. You missed the point.
Exactly. I always said, if this is, and I said this when I was a Christian at the time, if the God that I believe in does exist but isn't worthy of worship, then I'm not going to worship him.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can't get around this problem by saying, well, he's still terrible, and I admit that he's terrible, but he's God, so I have to worship him. No, you don't. You can still not worship him if he's not worthy of worship.
A different version of God, maybe. Maybe there's a better concept. Maybe you can, maybe you can find it either in the Bible or maybe in a different religion. And you might say, but that God's not real. Well, you don't know that. What if it is?
If you're willing to accept one, you gotta kind of open Pandora's box with that.
Right.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, on the thing of hell existing, another reason kind of why I think that happens is because a lot of people, kind of like she said, there's this security blanket that they get from hell that no bad people who do bad things are going to get away with things. They're always going to get caught.
Yeah.
And feel better.
Yeah.
Like William Lane reality that some people are going to get away with things.
Yeah. William Lane Craig pontificated on this. Like, if there's no God, then there's no cosmic justice. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. But there's no cosmic justice if there's a God and what you say is true.
Yeah.
Because and somebody said that. They were like, well, but what about the person that kills? And then he's like, well, that's a really tough question. And that was it. That it's a really tough question to answer, God's grace. Yeah, but then there isn't cosmic justice for that person.
Exactly. And that's assuming cosmic
justice. So how does that work? It's like, and it's like, so they did the terrible things and they don't get punished. Yeah, that's you don't understand that. It's a mystery. Okay, isn't that a problem? No, that's fine, because then the other people will get punished. Yeah, but then people that shouldn't be punished are also punished. What about them? Well, that's
Exactly. So I just it perplexes me when it comes to these kinds of things, that people are more willing to justify the existence of hell because it makes them feel better about injustices in the world, as opposed to whether or not it actually maps to reality.
Yeah, but even then, she's still bending over, backwards mental gymnastics to try to make sense of it, because she knows that you can get away with it if you ask for forgiveness. So it seems to me, and she says she's open to talk, not debate, but maybe you could set up a thing. I don't know, or we could, who knows, but
I'd love to,
the question, I mean, there's so many questions asked, but that would be among them would be, how any of this works. I mean, which is it? Is it, is it justice? Is it mercy? Is it what, I don't know. It's just, but I think it's mainly, it's her working through cognitive dissonance. That's what I get from it. I don't see this as an explanation that really would, I don't even think that this really justifies it in a theological sense either. So it just failed on every level it could fail.
Yeah, I think, like, when it comes to an explanation is supposed to give you a greater degree of understanding, presumably.
Yeah.
This did not do that for me. I came out with far more questions than I did.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's just the way things are. I mean, she really could have just said it like that.
She really could have. Like, this was the intellectual equivalent of that.
It's like, well, why is there hell? Because there is. What's it like? It's not as bad as you think. It's a different kind of bad. And why is that there? Well, because you have a choice. It's either God or hell. That's your choice, God or hell. Which is it?
It's like, but wait, why didn't he give us more options? Well, he just didn't.
Yeah, he just didn't. That's just how it is. Okay, well, I mean, and it might be that way. That's fine to have that dichotomy, but then you have to. Well, then we get into demonstration and actual proof, and we're certainly not going to get that in this video. We didn't. There was no empirical evidence, repeatable test, or valid and sound argument. In fact, there wasn't even an argument in this video. There wasn't anything. There wasn't even biblical. Okay, well, there's some stuff she put in the description, but even those things don't really support her case because But oh man.
Well, in the same vein, this is a woman, and I believe I did a video on this already. She did do a video on why she believes in God, even though she doesn't have proof. So I don't think we're going to be getting any empirical evidence anytime soon from someone who doesn't think proof is necessary to justify belief in God.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could actually frame an interesting argument that if the biblical God wants you to have faith, then there cannot be proof of it because that would negate faith. Therefore, there is no evidence of God. Therefore, it is the God that requires faith exists.
Yeah.
Like,
I also like the comment about
I made a thing. Lobster.
Get out of jail free card.
I'm sorry, I didn't put lobsters exist in there, so it fails as a syllogism, man. Yeah. To get out of free card, but it's a monopoly where everyone starts in jail.
Yes.
Continuously deserves to be in jail, doesn't get out of jail, and they can only get out of jail, and then the rest of the board is heaven. I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna draw this Monopoly board. It's gonna.
I would genuinely, if someone made a parody game like that, I guarantee you, I would buy it.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be a great question, sure. If you were put in the Islamic hell for not accepting Allah, would that be justice? Would it be what? And be like, well, it'd be this. I suspect it'd be, well, that's the way it is, because that's really what her answer boiled down to. Is this is what she believes is the case, and that's it. There isn't more to it. There isn't less to it. But there was so much, and there's still so much to explore. And hopefully, somebody somewhere got something from all this, tangents that we went off on. Yeah. Because there's justice, there's free will, there's how do you be a good person? Is because the idea of sin, I think that's just a horrible idea. Anyways, it's the good news is that too is an invention. There is no such thing as sin. There's things that we do or don't do that are positive or negative, that result in something good or result in something bad. And what do we mean by good and bad? Well, things that benefit people or animals or life in general. So I mean, I guess, I mean, you get really nitty picky with that stuff, and that's a great conversation too.
Yeah. So, just briefly, when it comes to like morals and stuff, I think it just depends on what you as the individual value. So what is good to you is based on what your values are. So I value human life.
Yeah, ethics, right.
Human life. Murder is antithetical to human life. So murder goes against my values, and that's what I mean when I say something is bad. So it's really about definitions. What does the individual person mean? That's why I kept harping on her for definitions, because if I don't know what you mean when you say things, I can't understand you.
Like you could say, well, death is bad, but yet I would grant abortion because even though I view it as bad, I also view that it not being a thing that's permitted as worse.
Exactly.
So you can have
you value more.
Yeah, there's flex. It depends on your ethical system, of course, and that's a whole another thing. I wanted to talk because I mentioned like my past and things done. So here's a story from my past. Okay. There was this friend I had. This girl wasn't a girlfriend. It was just friend. This girl, and we had talked on the bus and made up try to make up our own language and all these different things. And this one day we were standing waiting for the bus, and I was standing way off somewhere, and these big kids were like, "Here, throw rocks at her," and I picked up some little teeny tiny rocks and I threw them, and they actually did hit her in the eye, no less. And and I'm like, oh no, I didn't do it. I didn't do that. That wasn't me. That was them. And she was crying, and that was the end of that friendship. And I felt terrible and horrible. And I didn't see her. I think then I left that school or whatever. So I never saw that person again. I didn't get to say sorry. I didn't get to explain. I don't, I the peer pressure thing and all that or whatever, where I should have thrown the rocks at the big kids. Really, I wish I could go back in time and undo it, and I can't. There's no taking that back. There's no undoing that. There's no asking her for forgiveness. Wherever she might be. So what do we do with that sort of thing? Well, what can I learn, or what can other people learn from that? That's the sort of question that we're putting to the side, because all I have to do is ask for forgiveness from some deity, and then I don't have to worry about it. And am I still here? Hello? He exploded. Well, bleep. So, hi chat. How's it going? I don't know what to do. It's time to panic. It's what it is. So, what do you think that story can be about? It's gonna, maybe I'm not here. Maybe none of this is real. Am I still alive? Oh, I am. Thank goodness I'm still here. Yeah. M question mark. Good. Thinbox dictator. Please talk to me in chat, because I lost my host. Panic. Maybe his phone died or computer died. I don't know. Well, you know what? I'll just I'll say that I don't know. Maybe you can tell me what that's what to derive from that incident in my past. What can we learn from that? What can we glean from that? What because I wish I could tell that person sorry. Any rate, yeah, that's a good. Yeah, how forgiving are Christians against those who reject their beliefs? Yeah, good question. And ultimately, how forgiving is God if you have to ask for that forgiveness? Why wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be more forgiving just to give it to you, and not have to ask? I think that would be, But again, it depends on your theology. So if you don't have a logical argument to frame your theology in, and you don't have any empirical evidence or repeatable tests, maybe, just maybe, you should be skeptical of your theology. And we'll see you next time. Well, we won't see you. You'll see me or my icon. You might see Skeptic Skeleton if he returns. You might not. I don't know what's going on. So, I'm going to hit the button now and call it a day. And we'll see what happens next time. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye. Bye. Goodbye. And I love you all, except for you. You know how I'm talking about. I don't love you. I just like you. I tolerate you. You know who you are. You know who I'm talking about. All right. That's it. Finn. Comment, subscribe, like all the videos. Subscribe to Skeptic Skeleton. And, thumb up things and do all the things and throw money at me if you want. I don't know. Whatever.